like to welcome everybody to January 11th, Town of Poughkeepsie Committee of the Whole meeting. Please stand for a pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd ask everybody to remain standing for 1 second. I'd like to take a moment of silence for Officer McDonald, who passed away today. 30 years ago, he was shot down in New York City, and his commitment to the public moving forward was phenomenal. So a moment of silence for Officer McDonald. Thank you. Roll call. Second Ward, Bill Carlos.
Joe Conti, 3rd Ward. Joe Lepore, 5th Ward.
Ann Schurshin, 6th Ward.
Felicia Salvatore, Town Clerk.
John Bailey, Town Supervisor.
Pardon me. Jim Nelson, I'm the Town Attorney.
We have a very short agenda tonight, just a committee reports, and we have a presentation from the PDCTC tonight on a pedestrian survey in Arlington Town Center. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to PDCTC for this presentation. Welcome, thanks for coming, and thanks for working involved in this.
Sure, thank you. I did bring some handouts.
I don't think it's on.
I brought a couple handouts for the board members, so if you'd like those now, I can.
Sure.
Hi. If you got an extra one, I'll take it. Oops, that's okay.
That's okay.
They're supposed to be bolted down.
Are there enough, Joe?
Yeah, I think so.
Where he is. Everybody see that there?
Okay. All right, so I think I'll remain seated here just so you can hear me well, but if anyone, I can certainly get up at any point if you have a specific question or want me to point to something on the slide. Just to introduce myself, my name is Emily Dozier. I'm a senior planner with the Poughkeepsie Dutchess County Transportation Council, otherwise known as PDCTC. We're actually housed at the County Planning Department, and we are tasked with transportation planning for the county. And part of that role is providing municipalities with assistance with local transportation planning projects. So I'm very happy to be here tonight to present to you about the Arlington Town Center Pedestrian Plan, which is a study that was requested by the Arlington Business Improvement District, and we've been working on for the past year or so. And I also just wanted to mention that I am an Arlington resident, so this project has been very fun for me to work with, and I have a personal stake in its success. Okay, just to lay the framework here, there are 3 main objectives for this plan. One, to provide improved pedestrian access to the Arlington Town Center, to enhance the experience for people walking around in Arlington, and really to establish a vision for what Arlington can look like in the future. And we, with direction from the Business Improvement District and a local task force, focused on Main Street. We really see Main Street as the key element to improving Arlington. First, I just want to address why focus on pedestrian activity, why focus on walking. We know that local business districts do best when there's a lot of foot traffic. When there are people walking around, they're more likely to stop in and support your local businesses. So it's really important to having a healthy commercial district to have a lot of people walking around. We also know that business districts do best when there's a cohesive feel, when there's a sense of unity within it. And right now, Arlington feels a little bit disjointed. You have the area down by Raymond Avenue and College View, which has a distinct feel, and then the Main Street area feels very different. So the goal that we were presented with by the bid was to help establish a vision for how Arlington can feel more like a unified commercial district, more like one neighborhood versus two. And really the big picture goal here is to help position the town to apply for funding to implement some of the recommendations. So the goal of this plan is to give the town and the bid a document they can use for grant applications. Okay, we've done this a few times before. This is our fourth pedestrian study. Just want to point to one similar example, which was in the town of Hyde Park. Similarly, that was focused on economic development in the town center of Hyde Park. And that study has been used by the town to apply for numerous grants, which they've been successful at getting. And they've also been able to look at land use in a different way to improve properties around their town center. So what did we do? We first organized a pedestrian task force, and several members are here tonight. Ann Shershin has been on our task force. Jim Challey has been the chair. Bob Legacy, director of the bid, has been on the task force. And several other business owners in Arlington, as well as a representative from Vassar College. We conducted an inventory, collecting a lot of data, and then we reviewed all the town's plans, the zoning for the Arlington Town Center, other relevant plans, and came up with recommendations, which I'm going to highlight tonight. We've been soliciting public input both at the Arlington Street Fair. We had a booth, got a lot of input there, did a presentation to the bid back in September, and now we're doing a series of meetings here at the town board, also at the planning board, and another presentation to the bid. So in terms of schedule, this was requested by the bid, as I mentioned, and we really got started in the spring of 2016 with all of our field work. We've had regular meetings of this task force and also met with County Public Works because Main Street in Arlington is a county road. We also worked with DOT because several of the intersections are state intersections. And we've been developing the recommendations and are now finalizing the plan. This is the study area shown on this map, and this is on your handout. We inventoried the area outlined in yellow. The Arlington Town Center zoning district is shown in the light green, and the bid area is shown in the pink. And again, we focused on Main Street, and in particular, 3 intersections, which are circled here. The intersections at Grand Avenue, Raymond Avenue, and Taft Fairmont Avenues. So I'm just going to highlight some of the inventory work that we did. We collected a lot of data. I'm not going to go into detail on that. But we did inventory all the sidewalks in the area and rate them by condition. We identified sidewalk issues and also amenities, and those are the things that make it feel safe and comfortable to walk around. Things like street trees and lighting and benches, and we collected a lot of other data as well. And as you can see in this picture, Jim and Bob were very involved in our field work, so we thank them for that. Again, we rated the sidewalks, excellent, good, fair, or poor. And this is shown on this map. As you can see, the yellow, orange color, and the red are the areas that need the most work, and that includes several segments along Main Street. In terms of issues, these are some of the issues we collected: lifts, cracks, obstructions in the sidewalk. And again, we mapped all of that data, and I've just circled here for you a few clusters that generally correspond with some of those poor condition sidewalks. Jones and Springside, certainly, the area of Main Street near Taft and Fairmont, and some issues on Fulton Avenue as well. But the big picture takeaways are that most sidewalks in Arlington are actually in pretty good shape. About 88% were rated either good or excellent. So that's a great start. However, there were some important areas, especially along Main Street, that were not in good shape. There's a lack of connecting sidewalks north of Maple Street, and I know that's an area that's currently being developed, so that's a concern as well. There are very few marked crosswalks. That's something that was very evident to us walking around the area. We found 5 segments on Main Street and Haight and Maple, the 2 arterials, where there's more than 1,000 feet between a marked crosswalk. So people are crossing pretty much haphazardly, which is a safety concern. There are a lot of issues with the pedestrian signals in terms of how they're installed and placed. It's very inconsistent, so people tend not to use them because they don't really know how to use them effectively or if they're even working. And then the curb ramps, which are an important element of accessibility, several were missing, several didn't have the warning strips, the detectable warnings that are necessary, so there were some issues with those as well. In addition, we found a lot of driveways and parking lots, which you would expect in a commercial area, but not necessarily in a walkable business district. So every driveway represents a conflict point. There's cars coming in and coming out across the sidewalk. So the more driveways you have, the more potential conflicts you have, and the less comfortable it feels to walk along those sidewalks. We also found a very inconsistent set of amenities. Street trees, for example, lighting are not consistently available along a lot of the streets in Arlington, especially Main Street. And this is really an opportunity, we think, to kind of brand Arlington and create a cohesive image for Arlington. If you have consistent benches, consistent lighting, consistent trash cans even, they could all have the Arlington logo. That's a way to help identify the business district as a unique place. We also found a lot of people riding bicycles on the sidewalks, which is understandable why they don't feel comfortable on the street, but it's actually not safe both for people walking and it's actually less safe for bicyclists themselves. And finally, transit. We know there is good transit service, pretty good transit service in the area, but there's no evidence of it. There's no marked signs or stops to let you know where the bus is when it stops. So those are all things that we're addressing in this plan. Okay, I just want to highlight a couple of those field observations with some graphics. This is showing parking lots in gray and commercial driveways in pink, and the size of those pink circles represents the width of the driveway. So just to zoom in here, if you compare, for example, some areas along Main Street with College View Avenue, I think most people would say College View feels pretty comfortable to walk on. It's a nice street to walk up and down. Compared to Main Street, I think part of the issue, part of the reason it feels so comfortable is there's not a lot of big driveways, not a lot of parking lots. Whereas on Main Street, you have that constant in and out of traffic across the sidewalks. And then again with amenities, this is showing all the street trees that we identified as well as lighting and benches. And I'll zoom in here as well. Again, compare the area south on Raymond near College View and LaGrange. You have a lot of street trees, you have consistent lighting, and that's a very different environment than what you have up on Main Street, as you can see. Very few trees, very little lighting. So there's not that same feel of comfort and safety when you're walking in that area. So let me just pause there for a moment. I just breezed through our inventory very quickly. Any comments or questions before I move on?
I just have a question about the bid. How far, does it go all the way down to Main Street or just Raymond Avenue?
So the bid
I
is...
know that it doesn't show on the map yet.
No, actually the bid does.
The pink
I know.
stripes.
Yeah,
Let
I
me go
can't-
back to that image here.
Yeah, when the light's up, you can see
The
it.
bid is shown in pink on this graphic, and it's on the handout in front of you.
Yep.
So it includes all of the properties along Main Street except for the Holy Trinity Church. And it also goes down Raymond Avenue to College View and Fulton. So all of those blocks that are shaded with the pink stripes are part of the bid.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, I don't know, maybe I'm colorblind, I'm not sure.
Oh, is it hard to see? Okay. It's all of Main Street, to answer your question.
Okay. Thank you, yeah.
Okay, so the plan itself is organized in these categories, and I'm going to focus on Main Street because, again, that was our focus area, but I'm going to highlight a couple key recommendations from some of these other areas as well. So first to start, Main Street and Grand Avenue, as I mentioned, is our first key intersection, and I really think it's the most important intersection in the area. This is your introduction to the town of Poughkeepsie. It's your introduction to Arlington. Coming from the city, this is your welcome. And right now, it's a little bit of a mess. This intersection has a lot of safety issues. There's a number of crashes. We did a crash analysis, and this intersection has a high number of crashes. From a pedestrian bicycle perspective, has twice as many crashes as anywhere else in the area. We know this is in part because the intersection is complicated. North and South Grand Avenue are offset. Okay. And there's a lot of turning movements. There's no left turn signals, so people are trying to make lefts where there are gaps, but because the intersection's offset, that's difficult to do. There's also driveways very close to the intersection for the deli, et cetera, on your left side, looking at the picture up here, as well as the cleaners, and Oasis Beverage that has a big wide driveway that's open. So there's a lot of turning movements happening in a close area, and from someone who's walking, there's actually no pedestrian signals here. So as complicated as it is to drive through this intersection, it's even harder to walk because there's no indication of when to cross, or there's actually there's no crosswalk on one side and a sidewalk that stops where that large driveway by Oasis and Town and Country is. So it's got a number of issues. Yet this is your gateway to Arlington and to the town. So one of our big recommendations in this plan is to construct a roundabout at that intersection. You're familiar with roundabouts, of course, and you know that they improve safety dramatically. They reduce injury crashes by about 75%. Which is a huge, huge reduction. So they slow people down, but they also keep traffic moving. And because the intersection at Main and Grand currently doesn't operate very well, either from a safety perspective or a traffic perspective, I think a roundabout would really benefit both of those. It would also create a visual gateway into the town and into Arlington, symbolizing that you're here, you're in a different place, you're entering a special, unique neighborhood. And we've talked to the County Public Works Department about this because, again, this is a county intersection, and they're actually very interested in this kind of project. They think it would be a great improvement to that intersection. So just to highlight, this is the image that you see now as you're coming from the city into the town on Main Street at Grand Avenue. And this is kind of the vision that we've come up with a roundabout at the center, a full set of crosswalks. You have some driveways consolidated, so you have it more clear where cars should be going in and out. And that extra space from closing a couple driveways you can use for things like the street trees and the lighting and the benches. They really make it feel like a comfortable place to walk around. So I'm going to move on to our second intersection, which is Main Street at Raymond Avenue. And this is a state intersection because Raymond Avenue is a state road. One of the key issues here is the signal timing, and I'm not going to get overly technical, but you may know that there's an all-pedestrian phase here, which means the traffic stops in all directions and all the pedestrian signals go at the same time. So this does a couple things. One is that it extends the cycle, the signal cycle, quite a bit. So if you're waiting, you're going to wait a while. And that's whether you're waiting to cross the street on foot or whether you're waiting in your car. It also means that it's confusing. And we've found that people actually don't wait that long, either because they're impatient or because they don't understand how it works. And so they just cross with parallel traffic, as they do at most other intersections. So it's actually not used effectively, which indicates that it's not really working. There's some other issues related to crosswalk signage and push buttons and drainage, but the other key issue here is that the 2 of the 4 corners are empty. This is your key central intersection on the Main Street corridor, and half of the corners are vacant. So that's an important issue. If you're trying to bring more people to Arlington, more foot traffic, more local businesses, you want places for people to go, and you need a kind of a full streetscape, not an empty streetscape. So here are a few recommendations for Main and Raymond Avenue. One is to change that signal timing, and we've talked to DOT about that. Just make it standard signal timing like every other intersection. People will use it more effectively and they'll be safer crossing, and we'll all be saved that extra time that we're waiting to cross the street. Improving the drainage and some of the other infrastructure issues, and then thinking about how do we make those corners more active. One kind of short or medium-term idea is to create a public plaza, something like the image shown here on the northwest corner where it goes up the hill a little bit. A place for people to gather and sit if they're using maybe some of the local restaurants, for example. And then longer term, looking at redevelopment on some of those parcels, and whether that's mixed use, maybe some housing in the back, something to bring more people, again, to this area. Okay, and then Main Street Fairmont, our third key intersection. This area had a lot of infrastructure issues, lifts, as you can see in the image, where the sidewalk bumps up, and that's a tripping hazard for people, confusing signage. Again, this is another gateway. You're coming from the arterial into Arlington. You have the Acropolis Diner on one hand, and then you have the parking lot adjacent to Uno's on the other. So when you're coming up, as you can see in this lower photo, again, you have kind of this vacant feel. So we wanted to address that as well. So the recommendations include replacing the sidewalks and fixing some of those infrastructure issues, thinking about actually on the corner by the tanning salon and the Domino's and Rita's, maybe using that green space, which is actually quite large, for something like the space, that the pedestrian space that's shown in this image, with tables and chairs and umbrellas, So at least in the good weather, people could bring their pizza and their deli sandwich and their ice cream out and sit and enjoy the nice weather and make that a little bit more of an active space. In the longer term, that parking lot, I think, has a big opportunity for economic development written all over it. It's your key gateway, again, from the arterials. What about something iconic, something that says Arlington, something that denotes you're in a different place? You're coming from the arterial, but now you're in Arlington. You're going to slow down, and you're going to get out of your car and walk around. This is just an image that I found online, but it's the Arlington Theater in California. It doesn't need to look anything like that, but something that really signals to people, here you are in Arlington, and you recognize it. So again, let me take a quick pause there before I move on to Main Street. Those were our three key intersections. Any comments or questions from you on those?
Will you reducing parking space by doing the roundabout and all that? Would we eliminate some parking?
You know, I don't think it would eliminate very much parking. The main issue would be property acquisition. Right-of-way would be needed to make enough space for the roundabout. So in particular, the property on the northwest corner that has the deli, a couple other businesses.
It says the Little Caesars.
Little Caesars. That one would probably need to be taken. We haven't done detailed engineering. That's something that the Public Works Department would need to do to figure out exactly what the right-of-way needs would be for that. There may be a couple parking spaces, but I think, again, the main issue would be working with property owners to acquire the necessary right-of-way.
And what about the benches? Who will take care of the maintenance of the benches and the seating areas that you just highlighted?
Yeah, well, most likely that would be a partnership between the town and the bid. I think the bid does a lot of maintenance right now with some of the trash cans and some of the street trees. So, you know, I
And
think
some of the benches, yeah, that they maintain it. And I know Bob Legacy has a crew of teenagers that he works with, and he cleans the streets once a week. Yeah, so the bid very seriously.
Yeah, very nice project, very impressive. It reminds me Sarasota and some areas like that where they have rundowns and sitting area. Very nice.
And also, this roundabout wasn't their first choice. They worked through every option to get up to this point and comparing costs. And we were hoping, actually, that they could just take a little property alongside the gas station and line them up and have lights and do it quickly and for less money. But it just, nothing ever lined up. And the cost of refitting it for stop-and-go lights was the same as for a roundabout.
Yeah.
So that's how we ended up with the roundabout option.
Very nice. Would it make sense to do a survey along with the bid? I'm sure the bid has all the names of the business around the area. Do a survey and see what the business owners would like to see, and it could be something different that you just show. And I'm just my personal opinion, because sometimes an input from the public, it's being creative, and they might have great ideas. So just a suggestion.
Yeah, and we have been working with the bid. Bob is on our task force, and we presented to them, as I mentioned, and we will again. But certainly, more outreach to the business owners couldn't hurt.
And I'm a big favor of a bid. I wish other location down the road would do the same thing. But I don't know the gentleman Bob, but I know he does a great job, and
He does do a great job.
does a great job maintaining St. Raymond Avenue and all the festivity that during the year. It's congratulations, well done.
Thank you. Okay, so let me move on then to the Main Street corridor, and we can come back to any of those other areas as you want. So Main Street as a whole, we looked at as well. And as you recall from the earlier map, there were some sidewalks that are not in great condition. You can see the image up here of the mom with a stroller trying to push it across all of these cracked sidewalks. So there are a number of infrastructure issues. Again, very few marked crosswalks, and the lack of amenities, as I showed on that other map, street trees and lights and so on. The street is actually also very wide. There's parking on both sides, but if you even take that away, the travel lanes are between 13 and 16 feet, and a typical highway travel lane is 12 feet. So there's a lot of excess room on Main Street, which tends to create this kind of highway feel. And you can see in the images there's big structures for the signs, a lot of driveways, a lot of vehicle sales, vehicle repair. So it feels a little bit more like a highway than a walkable commercial street. So we have a number of recommendations for Main Street. I'm not going to go through these here, but I'm going to show you images of each of them. First is to repair and replace some of the sidewalks, and those are the key kind of basic infrastructure. Then we also recommend marking crosswalks, both across the side streets, which are shown in yellow there, but most importantly across Main Street itself. And the two locations we've identified near Lewis and I believe it's Van Wagner, you would have curb extensions. So it would actually go out into the parking lane so that the crossing distance is shorter and it's easier for people to see oncoming traffic and for drivers to see them. So it makes it much safer to cross. We're also recommending a street redesign, and this is a major project. Again, this is a county road, so this would be led by the County Public Works Department. But really, I think to make Main Street feel more comfortable for walking and to make it more inviting, both for people and for local businesses, it needs to look and feel like a walkable commercial street. So right now, this is just showing your Woodcliff Avenue, which is by that Formosa restaurant. The travel lanes, again, are about 14.5 feet wide. You can narrow those down to 11 feet. That's plenty of space for a bus and trucks. But it also makes traffic feel just a little bit calmer. And it gives you extra space, which you can then use to widen the buffers enough to put in street trees and lighting and benches, and even have a little space left over to widen the sidewalks if you want. So the dimensions change a little bit as you go up and down Main Street, but the general idea is to narrow those traffic lanes down to 11 and use the extra space for wider sidewalk buffers, which you can then put in all the kind of amenities that you want to create that atmosphere that's really inviting to people. In the longer term, we'd recommend looking at redeveloping some of the auto-oriented uses, so things like the used parking, the used car sales, some of the auto repair, and consolidating driveways. You know, it may the use may not change, but it can certainly be designed differently as well, so they have fewer of those conflict points as you're walking up and down the street. So we have a couple of just very conceptual drawings here showing first from Grand Avenue to Raymond Avenue. This shows the roundabout at Grand Avenue. It also shows opportunities for infill development. Mixed use is shown in orange here, so ideally it would be mixed use and some commercial space, and then maybe residential in the back. These are really economic development opportunities for the town and for Arlington. There is space for more businesses and more shops to help create that lively feel. And then the second half here showing from Raymond Avenue to Taft and Fairmont, similar picture, just showing conceptual opportunities for economic development, mainly through infill. We're also showing on this drawing some shared access between parcels so that you can consolidate driveways and have shared parking. And I do want to say that Main Street already does have a number of what we call pedestrian-friendly uses or buildings that are right up at the sidewalk with big windows that make it interesting to walk by, a mix of uses with residential apartments above and retail on the ground floor, outdoor seating. These are the kind of places that people want to go to. And I think there's a real opportunity to build on this and to create more of this up and down Main Street. So again, let me show you the existing view. This is Main Street from Raymond Avenue looking east towards Taft and Fairmont. You can see a lot of parking lots, a lot of cars, not very many people. And the vision that we are presenting here shows a much more lively streetscape with some more infill development, more small businesses, local businesses. Again, that narrower street with the marked parking lanes and the bus stop and the shelter, the consistent street lights and street trees. Okay, let me take another final pause here. I just ran through Main Street in a dash. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, Main Street, did they ever look at putting a center divider like they did on Raymond Avenue as opposed to just pulling the street in? Or is it something that they don't think is feasible? Because that makes it real calm.
Right. So you're talking about a boulevard type approach like you have on Raymond Avenue. There are pros and cons. Certainly if you have enough space, a center boulevard can be great. You can have trees in it and it does calm traffic quite a bit. But I think most important is if you do have limited space, which we figure we have about 7 feet of extra space on Main Street right now, is to use that for the sidewalks and the area next to the sidewalks. Because if you widen those a little bit, then you have room for the street trees and the lights, and you create that buffer between the traffic and where people are walking. So the boulevard helps beautify and helps calm traffic, but it doesn't help the people on the sidewalks. So if we had to choose one or the other, we would use that extra space to widen the buffers and widen the sidewalks to make it more comfortable and safe for people walking.
When you look at that one picture, it still looks like a main street. It doesn't look like you've entered something, unless there was something in the beginning that says you actually entered Arlington. Otherwise, it still looks like that one picture, still open like it's Main Street. It's missing that you entered, a walking neighborhood type thing.
I mean, certainly, these are just proposals, and I think you could work with the County Public Works Department to come up with a design that you're all happy with. I'm not sure that there's space for both a center boulevard and wider buffers and sidewalks, so it would be a trade-off. Yeah. Okay, so town center. We looked at the whole Arlington Town Center district as well, and I'm just going to actually show you a graphic which you have on the back of your handout. This highlights all of the recommendations for the entire area that are infrastructure related. So new sidewalks, new crosswalks, new curb ramps, signal improvements. It shows the roundabout. This is kind of your blueprint that the town can use to apply for grant funding or to use in funding applications. And I just want to make the point that this is intended to be flexible. Certainly, we're offering this to you, and you can do with it as you choose, but it's a working document. It's something that you can use when you're thinking about priorities. And it's separated into phases, so the colors represent red, phase 1 or short term, blue, phase 2, medium term, and green, phase 3, long term. But what we really recommend is build when you can, take advantage of whatever opportunities present themselves. If there's funding available or there's a property that's turning over, certainly take advantage of that. Don't wait if you have the chance to do one of these recommendations. So this is just a one-stop snapshot of everything we're recommending for the town center. And I want to highlight a couple other key recommendations. In terms of bicycling, we recommend some bicycle parking. There's really none, so people are locking their bikes haphazardly all over the place on poles, etc. In terms of transit, I mentioned we recommend some consistent stops and shelters to really help people use the system with maps and information about where the bus is going and when it's stopping there. Public space, again, we're recommending installing what we call a streetscape amenities package. So it would be a consistent set of things, a trash can, a bench, a bike rack, a light, a street tree, and they all look the same, they have the same branding, and you see that around the entire area. It starts to create a sense of this is Arlington, and I know where I am. It's a unique place in Poughkeepsie. And then land use, again, recommending these land use changes that support creating that walkable district. Parking I want to highlight just because that's always a question that comes up, and it is very important. I think parking is critical to having a successful business district because you need people to be able to come from other areas and find a place to park. But on the other hand, you don't want parking to dominate your business district because then it starts to lose the uniqueness that brings people to it in the first place. So it's a real balancing act, and I think the most important thing that the town and the bid can do is first do a parking study to understand how much parking there is, where it is, and how it's used. And you can do this different times of day, different days of the week, and you can map it. An example here is shown from a parking study that we worked on in Beacon. Then you really get a sense of where the available parking is, where you have enough, where you don't have enough. And based on that study, you can then develop a parking management plan to make sure that the parking is working as it should. And that could be things about enforcement, signage, just letting people know where parking is, permitting systems. There's a whole toolbox of things you can use. The big picture is you want the most convenient spots to turn over regularly so that you can always find a spot or two on the street. And then the off-street parking is more used for longer term visits. And that's achieved through those parking management plans. Policies and programs, we have a couple recommendations here. Some of it relates to the zoning. We think there's a great opportunity to develop some more visual guidelines in the town center zoning code so that developers know exactly what the town is looking for. There are a lot of good examples out there of things called pattern books or form-based codes that have detailed drawings, such as this shown on the slide, of exactly what kind of signs you want, what kind of windows you want, what kinds of roofs, so that you get a consistent look and feel and it becomes less haphazard. And just to point out an example of that is the corner at Raymond and College View, and that the image shown in the bottom right. You can see they all have those consistent hanging signs. They have a consistent awning. The windows are similar, and it starts to feel like one place because they all have the same kind of treatment. And I think that's something you can achieve on Main Street as well. We're recommending removing the drive-in overlay district, and I know that was recently passed, but I do think it's important to think about how do you want Main Street to look and feel. And if you want it to look and feel more like the rest of the Arlington Business District, less auto-oriented and more people-oriented, then I think having additional drive-ins is going to run counter to that. So I think it's at least something for the town to think about. Certainly the big picture here is how do you address parking and those driveways. One of the key issues with drive-throughs is they tend to have multiple driveways for each parcel. Each property has its own in and out. And if you can consolidate with adjacent parcels and share lots and share parking, then you can achieve a lot of that as well. Okay, and then we have a couple recommendations related to more programmatic concepts. One is having a capital plan for sidewalk construction and maintenance. I understand that the highway department does maintain the sidewalks, which is great, but my understanding is there's not a long-term capital plan. I think it would be helpful to have at least a 5-year plan outlining priorities, where sidewalks need to be built and maintained over a number of years, and what funding is being allocated to that, so that you can really start planning ahead and being consistent with your construction and maintenance. We also recommend that the town consider adopting this plan as an official town document, whether it's an addendum to your town plan, any kind of mechanism, just a resolution. That gives you the leverage to really use it to implement the recommendations. When you have a developer come in, you can say, this is actually, this proposal is not consistent with our adopted pedestrian plan, so we'd like you to consider this instead. Adopting the plan would help you in those negotiations. And finally, we'd like to recommend creating a permanent task force to help steer this plan in the future. We've had a great group helping us so far, and I think that group or a similar body could maintain the momentum and keep things moving forward. Finally, funding. I just want to point out a couple things because people always ask, well, where's the money coming from? And that's a very good question. There's a number of funding sources, everything from local funds, which are the most flexible, but also we know they're limited. Private funds, community development block grants are a great source, which I know the town has used in the past. County Public Works, of course, since this is a county road, will be needing to dedicate funds to this as well. And then on the federal side, there are a number of programs that I've outlined. Federal funding, as you probably know, comes with a lot of strings attached. It's difficult to use. There's a lot of administrative requirements. But there are some good programs both for safety improvements, such as a roundabout, and pedestrian bicycle improvements. So we've outlined those all in the plan as well. And finally, our next steps, we're presenting this to the BID, as I mentioned, and the Town Planning Board this month, and we're going to have our final task force meeting at the end of the month. At that point, we'll hand over the plan and all of the mapping and the documents to the town and the BID, and you can take it and run with it. So we really hope this is useful for you in pursuing grants and other funding opportunities to improve Arlington. This is my contact information. I also brought some cards, and I'm happy to answer any more questions.
I think you did a great job on the presentation. I was a bit late, but it looks wonderful. Hopefully we could help push it through and get some money for you.
Great.
I can see how much effort went into it, and I'm very appreciative of it, and I think it's fantastic. Seeing some of those drawings, I see buildings being moved, and I agree, I'd love to see all that too, but I know that's the big task. You're right, get those sidewalks hammered out first. I like your ideas on Main Street, trying to slow that down, having parking on both sides. With respect to your comments, of course, but just bike and car, almost making it the old cruise of Main Street. I love the idea of that and trying to bring it all together.
Well, and we're also hoping by showing some interest in Main Street and making it look better, making it prettier, that we can get some of the owners interested in their building.
Yeah.
And
we've seen that with the laundromat. We've seen it with Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
Those were areas that were a little distressed. You see them coming back. I think it's fantastic. Mm-hmm. My worry with intersection 1 is that Little Caesars building, the old Capitol Bakery building. I saw what you would want, and I don't know how that would work with that roundabout, but I'd certainly love to see it. I'm certainly not trying to stop you in any way. But you got to dream big, which I think is great. I'm all in favor of it, but you know what? I think get those sidewalks ironed out first, get that straightened out, work on the street, and I think some of those things might just change with time.
Right.
And they've had a great interest,
Right.
going forward. I mean, this is not their first presentation. They presented to the bid one night, and people in Arlington have a big interest in this too. So,
And we as a town-
stated, Joe, you're seeing more and more people getting interested in fixing their business up. So that's what you want, because once they come in, they see 1 block, 2 blocks are done, you'll get more people interested in coming in. But we have to be careful of what we allow going forward too.
Sure.
So it doesn't throw the whole thing, off
Is the
guard.
next step for you that we take this plan and when a developer comes for something on Main Street, hold that plan up against yours?
We're not
As a guide, as a,
Well, I think it's up to the town and the town planning board to decide how to use it. We're not trying to dictate what happens on private property. I think the idea with the plan is to show a vision. And so I think we'd certainly like you to consider it when you look at development proposals and to say, does this proposal really match the vision that's being outlined in this plan? Some of those drawings that I showed were conceptual, so it's not to say you need to, exactly follow that. But I think the idea is the more that you can make Main Street feel like a walkable business district, the more successful it's going to be. The more businesses are going to want to come, and the more people are want to come. So we hope that it helps you implement that vision in those discussions.
Was there any piece in there, the piece, I don't even know, it was Raymond Ave, going up towards Sice, where Holy Trinity is? Did you guys ever discuss that one empty street, basically from the War Memorial going up? There's nothing there, and, the other side is being developed.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like, you had the nice, location where everybody sit on there in the corner of Raymond Avenue, but from there to the next intersection, just a blanket, and that is being developed at this point. And have that all tied in, it ties the neighborhood into, that project and down to Raymond Avenue, it actually brings it all together like you're trying to do to Main Street. That
Right.
piece is still a disconnect.
That's a tough area because it's a lot of just stone, rock walls.
Yeah,
So
right.
Holy Trinity's built up high, it's hard to really create that business environment up
Well,
that
that one
road.
piece in the front where you had the umbrellas and things in front of Holy Trinity, that's owned by the state, correct? That's not Holy Trinity.
Correct. That parcel on the corner is owned by the state,
Yeah.
yeah.
The umbrellas one, wasn't that in front of the Ritas and the K&D and the Tanning? Wasn't that your
was
idea?
one,
That?
Right.
Oh, was there another one?
But there was another one that
Yeah.
kind of showed the staggered layers.
Oh, right, the wood
Yeah.
steps and
Yeah.
all such, right.
Because, and another discussion too is with the expansion of the loop bus, that this could actually become a terminal, a stopping place for the buses to come in and let people off and pick up other routes. So we could actually have a hub there.
Right, on the east side of the intersection near where the parking
Right.
lot is, right? But yeah, to address your question, Raymond Avenue Extension, I think is what it's officially called, right? Going north, it's a very tough area, as you noted,
And
because
it's
of the rocks and everything.
Yeah.
But it is going to be a key connector because of the development happening up north there with Mr. Tinkelman's property. It's going to be a little bit tough, but I think you're right. It's the easiest way for people to get down to Main Street from that development, and it needs to have something so that it doesn't feel like a dead space.
Dead and safe. Because
Right.
you're up there, and as you said, with the rock, it's a very dead, not well-lit area. So when Felicia walks home, you want to make sure she feels safe going
I walk there quite a bit.
going back up that
And
way.
it is scary, that one little section.
Besides, you've got the War Memorial, the commercial section over there, so this is something that has to be semi-addressed to make it a safe-looking area.
Yep.
I think you're on the right path because the planning board loves bicycle racks, so you're in good shape.
Well, it is true. I mean, I find myself, I'll bring my bike down there, park there, and just drive around Raymond Avenue, because it is a nice, safe area, and if we can do that with Main Street, I can see it, I really can.
Yeah.
Was there any talk about the intersection by Uno's? Because that's kind of a dangerous.
The Taft and
That's
Fairmont?
dangerous.
Yeah, on Main Street, the intersection with
Yeah.
Taft and Fairmont. That was our third key intersection.
There's been times when I've walked or been driving home from work, a couple times, where people will come down the hill from the arterial and they'll make a left in front of Uno's, and sometimes they have actually gone, because it's
On
two
the inside
lanes.
lane, yeah.
It's two lanes where one will, and they've gone the wrong way down, an older man one time was, and I was like beeping to try and, it's just a weird intersection there.
Yeah, that intersection has a lot of crashes as well.
Yeah.
Both
they
Grand
generally-
Avenue and Fairmont Taft.
Generally come off that arterial, and they're moving too, coming down.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just wondering if that, I didn't hear anything about that particular intersection except for maybe light changes or something. But
So hopefully this project will not last all be approved in the next 10 years, or I say this calendly.
It's not, Joe, it's not a project, it's a working document, so
It's
to get pieces done.
ideas.
We're working on the sidewalks, and we get grant money for sidewalks.
My point is, what I don't see this project, that's what my point
It's
is.
a working point, we've been working on the sidewalks, which is, it shows from the project. We've gotten quite a few grants over the years on the sidewalks in that area, and it's helped, and the bid has put some of their money in, so it is working. It's getting there, it's a long project, I don't see it changing overnight, but as we get a different developer come in and we're steering them in the right direction, it definitely is going to make a change.
Yeah.
Well, and also
Phenomenal job.
the section of Main Street we're looking at is really not that long.
It's about a mile.
Yeah, so that if we could get some funding, we could seriously look at revamping it, but.
Yeah. And I think the county public works department is a very willing partner. If the town wants to work with them, I think they're interested in helping work on Main Street. They know it's a unique county road because it's an urban street, so it's different than some of their other streets, but they're very interested in this as well.
Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, great job.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to committee reports, the final committee reports anybody has from 2016. First one, the finance report, and I have nothing to report. Fire advisory report,
I have nothing to report either.
government operations in,
Nothing to report?
land use and planning, Mr.
Nothing to report, sir?
Personnel, Mr. Savon.
Nothing to report.
Recreation, nothing to report except the senior center, we're implementing some of the changes we discussed with the computers and the signing on, and we're still working on trying to get the lunch program down there for the seniors. That falls under senior one. Technology and equipment, Mr. Carlos.
Nothing to report.
Water, sewer, highway infrastructure, Mr. Carlos.
Infrastructure, we have a couple of things in the discussion phase. One is continuing to work on the drainage, hopeful with, to get in front of the committee of the whole, one of the future ones, to bring the discussion back about drainage. And then we have one about highway, for the highway department. We're spending $10 million over 3 years to pave roads. We want to have a piece of local law that protects them from somebody just cutting into them or doing it without permit, without permission, without supervision. And I hope to have a draft of that law ready for the board, probably at our March, that might be a little too optimistic, but our March committee of the whole, so you can all have input as to what we want to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because there's a lot of contractor that they'll cut the road, and if they go back, they wouldn't do as good a job as, so that's a good point too.
It takes away the life of the roads, too, once you start cutting
Yeah,
them
there's
open.
patches all over the place, yeah.
Anything else, Mr. Carlos?
Resolved, the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie does hereby adjourn executive session.
Or do I want to do public comment?
Oh, you want to do that first? Okay.
Yeah.
To suspend the rule for public comment on any town items at all?
Hurry up.
Wait a second on that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Would anybody like to discuss anything that we discussed tonight, this presentation, or anything in relation to the town at all? No? I'd like to make a motion to resume the rules.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Carlos?
Be resolved, the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie does hereby adjourn to executive session to consider the following matters, to wit: litigation, to discuss litigation strategy of the case known as Bartini; confidential communication between the attorney and his client, the town board, based on the attorney-client privilege; and be it further resolved, there be no action appropriating money. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Town board adjourns to executive session at 7:49 PM.
Thank you.